a lot of us are oftentimes, we're there. We know that we are capable of solving problems, right? We go from room to room to room as physicians, and we solve problems very quickly. And but yet in the real world, we were sort of told that we weren't capable of doing that.
So you're combining robotics plus AI. If it accelerates and converges, and this is the stage that it's going to get to, what impact will it have on the ASC business, on the endoscopy business?
To start creating more white space, and they need to start thinking differently in terms of, yes, this is working for me today, but what works today will absolutely not work tomorrow.
That mindset would tell you this stuff is exciting. It's an adventure that I'm going to go on, and I'm going to figure out a way to put all this together and reinvent the future like it doesn't exist.
So you kind of helping us to identify the pain point, really narrow it down, come up with a simple solution, and then remain disciplined in doing so. I think that was worth its weight in gold.
Hi, Aisha. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Praveen. It's great to see you. Always a pleasure to engage with you.
I love the fact that we're getting together to talk about the GI Mastermind.
Absolutely. The GI Mastermind for me was transformative. And I was just thinking back before we got on the call about exactly when was it that Praveen reached out to me, and how did you actually identify me as a potential member or participant in your cohort? So how did all of that happen anyway, just out of curiosity?
Very interesting that you asked that. So I remember now that you attended the program twice. There was the
Mhm.
first year, and then you repeated it the next year. At that time, I just wanted to have the right people in the room, people who had a hunch that, there was something beyond the day-to-day stuff that we fill GI offices and surgery centers with. Like, so it's not just the day-to-day, but there's something, the future is unfolding. And I saw that you were having that glimpse into that future. So I wanted in the room. That's why I reached out. And my whole thinking was for those of you who joined and who were working through this, if you had the tools and if you were able to see the future from the lens that I was seeing, then my curiosity was, what will you go and do with it? And you've done fantastic. And it's just exciting for me to watch that unfold.
Yeah, I remember when you first reached out about Mastermind, one of my challenges as a physician innovator was that I was in a private practice, sitting in the community, very much at the intersection of where healthcare is being delivered, but also sitting next to the pain points where people had challenges with access to care, and not really understanding the path forward. And so, it was intriguing to me that there was actually a community out there that existed of like-minded individuals where, I remember going into the first meeting and with a half-formed idea and feeling like, okay, I'm not going to be shot down at the table with this one. You actually sort of invited me to think through the problem and invited other people to chime in with regards to the problem. And I thought, okay, this is a safe space where we can begin to explore what the opportunities are in gastroenterology. But one thing that was interesting to me about you, Praveen, was I thought initially that you were a gastroenterologist. So my question to you is, how were you even introduced to the field of gastroenterology? Like, why GI?
Yeah, why GI? Yeah, it's an excellent question. Usually, when I give my keynotes, so the disclaimer I put up is that I'm not a gastroenterologist. Yeah, people do assume that I am a GI because I seem to know so much or have points of view about the future and everything. But the interest in GI came because of Next Services, the company that I co-own. I'm one of the co-founders there. And the early opportunities or work involved gastroenterologists. So it's been several years now since I began working with GIs regularly. So they taught me everything that I know about gastroenterology. And that company, the focus is on billing and now more and more AI and automating the back office, front office of GI operations. But at that time, like, so these interactions with several endoscopists, gastroenterologists, taught me about their concerns and about where they wanted things to go. And that laid the foundation. If I fast forward that story a little bit, like what everybody began knowing me about was private equity in gastroenterology. I don't know if you remember that one. But the reason that happened is I actually asked some of the gastroenterologists that I knew that what would you like to read about? Because I loved writing and I'd write about all kinds of things. And when I asked that, people kept saying, I don't know what to do about this private equity thing. And when I wrote about it, so I hit Wall Street, given my background, which is in MBA. So it wasn't really hard to figure out what the PE companies were doing and were going to do. So I knew that they would copy the formula that they had for dermatology to gastroenterology, and I made certain predictions. And the timing of that book was, I guess, perfect looking back. And that accelerated the platform. Like, so once I had the platform, the book Scope Forward happened that had all these ideas about the future that I already knew for several years. Many years ago, like, so this was back in 2012 that I sat in a self-driving car and I saw how that was shaping up and how the auto industry changed. And then I saw even back then that the auto industry had dismissed efforts in the direction of self-driving. And then now here we are where everyone is going in that direction. And that's obviously the future. It's already here, at least in many cities, it's already a reality. So I compared that with what was going on with gastroenterology. There was resistance towards digital biology, non-invasive tests, and people actually hated it. Like, I don't want to name, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, so people had very strong emotional reactions. So I knew there was something else going on. There's something else under the surface. And I put all those ideas together in Scope Forward. And one thing led to another. And after the publication of Scope Forward, I wanted something like really action oriented. I said, if it's a book, people are going to just read it and then forget about it. Most people will not even completely read a book. I wanted action. I wanted industry wide change to shift in the right direction, to go towards the future more consciously. Like medicine not being about, mindlessly going about it and doctors fearing about their future, patients not trying to find doctors, doctors leaving medicine, all of that. Like, so I just wanted to hit at the heart of it. And that became the premise or the foundation for GI Mastermind. Though I never talked to all of you about why, we were doing this, I dangled the carrot of technology right in front. But once people were in, we had those direct conversations. I think the impact the program left people with was far beyond technology or business. I think it was the deeper stuff that mattered, and that changed gears for many of the participants.
One sentence that you said that was very interesting kind of leads me to the idea of organizational change or change management. And you saw back in 2012 that, this exponential technology is how you initially described it in GI Mastermind was coming probably across other verticals, and that eventually we would need to implement that technology in healthcare and specifically in GI. Was there, and you spoke about resistance to change that you also witnessed. What was sort of your early ideas of how you would slowly but substantially, which you've done, how would you begin to change the mindset gastroenterologists and gastroenterology leaders? Did you have a plan coming in?
So I knew that it can't just be about technology. I also knew it can't just be about business. And I definitely knew it can't be about mindset. And if I were to call it mindset, people will be confused. So I called it leadership. Actually, what I wanted to talk about was mindset. Like, so that was at the heart of what this was about. But then it had to be of practical value, like immediate practical value. If you invested an hour and a half, or you should be able to go next Monday morning or even the next day and do something with it. Like, so you should be able to spot exponentials in action at work. You should be able to differentiate between what is linear model versus what is an exponential model. Then not only have you hit home as far as the practical stuff is concerned, people will get new opportunities, career opportunities. People will make money, save money, do all that stuff, and they will learn. But at the same time, deep action, like fundamental change, is not possible without mindset.
We
Without
all love leadership opportunities, right?
yeah,
Many of us consider ourselves leaders, and leaders want to be with other leaders. So I think that was brilliant.
it's also humbling, right? Like, so all are very senior leaders. Like, so many of the early participants who are industry leaders of gastroenterology. And what could possibly one teach leaders about leadership? So, but still for them to accept that and come in and participate was fantastic. At the heart of that was actually shifting your own mindset. Unless
Mhm.
we create a safe space to openly talk about it, reflect, and know that you're not alone. Everybody is dealing with this, but change is possible. Like, so once you get that enthusiasm and that drive from within, then you're going to take the big action as far as AI is concerned or technology is concerned. Because if we don't make deep change right now within the industry, I see significant disruption ahead. Back when we started the program originally, we may have had a lot of time, but like now, with things doubling every 6, 7 months, it's high risk.
No, absolutely. And I think, for people like myself that had these various ideas, what GI Mastermind also helped me with organizing my thoughts. And one of the exercises that I can recall that you and I did one-on-one was you said, okay, Asia, you have these three ideas, right? But we're on this boat and the weight is heavy. You got to throw one of these ideas off and close your eyes and figure out what you're going to get rid of. So a lot of us are oftentimes, we're there. We know that we are capable of solving problems, right? We go from room to room to room as physicians, and we solve problems very quickly. And but yet in the real world, we were sort of told that we weren't capable of doing that, right? I was always told, yeah, you have this idea, but there's a bigger entity out there that can do it faster, right? That has the infrastructure to deliver, that has more money. So you kind of helping us to identify the pain point, really narrow it down, come up with a simple solution, and then remain disciplined in doing so. I think that was worth its weight in gold. And my next question is, how big of a role do you think that COVID had, in this whole GI mastermind journey?
COVID had a big role to play, multiple ways. Practical stuff was exactly what you said. Like, so people were trying to figure out, how do I survive? What do I do? How do I deliver care? Is this the norm? Is this the new norm? And confusion, and how is someone else figuring all of this out? That was the premise for the Scope Forward show, because all I wanted to do back then was let's get people and talk to them openly. And my mantra was, how can I be useful to the GI community? And I just kept doing that again and again. There was a deeper, subtler reason as far as COVID was concerned. What the pandemic did for the world and for various leaders, particularly, is that it made them deeply reflective about life. So we had time for ourselves, and people actually earnestly began asking the question, what do I really want to do with my life? And the way I've been living it, the way I've been working, is this really what I want to do? Now, it's a different matter that many people went back exactly to the older life, soon enough after COVID was over, but many didn't. GI Mastermind became that space of reflection. Like, I love the framing that you said earlier, like it was a mirror and a map for you. So it did provide that mirror, because, here people were already reflecting that come out of that period, or they were in that period, and they were thinking, what do I actually do? What do I do with my practice? How do I shape the future? We started 2021, right? And Scope Forward came out 2020. We're talking peak COVID period. And at that time, it would have been impossible to think that, hey, like, there's a future, and then I'm going to shape this future on my terms. Like, so it was pretty radical from that standpoint. Like, but that's how COVID helped.
GI is such a fast role, and our narrow focus is on delivering efficient healthcare. So the foundations of our practice is, we have to be good as proceduralists. We have to make sure that we are able to deliver the technical components of healthcare in an efficient way. We're focused on revenue cycle management and making sure that, our practices stay afloat and are profitable, and that we can deliver, high quality care at a reasonable cost to keep people healthy, especially in private practice where we're sitting in the community. But that leaves very little space for creativity. And what I saw happening was a bunch of third-party vendors, even non-healthcare providers, coming in to solve problems. And it was quite frustrating for me because whenever that happens with an outside entity, it's never integrated. And there are a ton of problems associated with the solution that they're bringing in because they don't know the nuances of healthcare. What really made a lasting impression on me is the imperative that you had that people need to start creating more white space, and they need to start thinking differently in terms of, yes, this is working for me today, but what works today will absolutely not work tomorrow. And we began to really experience that, even as it relates back to COVID again. Yesterday doesn't look anything like today, and today won't look like tomorrow. So how do you sort of convince people when a model is already working? Because it's not like we were, not profitable at the time, but how do you help people understand, that you must continue to evolve, that you have to stay innovative, that you have to stay adaptable, or you'll become extinct, essentially, or as Dan said, you'll die on the vine. What was your strategy around that?
It wasn't much of a strategy. It was more of just being honest, just saying things as it is without holding back, without an agenda, or, trying to convince people to do one thing or another. And I felt that if people, the GI community, were to see the future from the lens that I was seeing, then they would probably move in the direction of taking similar actions. What I actually saw and what I continue to see when I look at physicians, like, so you guys are some of the most brilliant people on the planet. It's not easy to be a doctor. It takes years and years of effort to get to the point of where you are. To even before physicians start making money, you're already reaching your mid 30s, like, as a gastroenterologist. Then you are getting into private practice. Then you have your loans to pay off. And it's a big journey that the majority of professional humanity world does not have to go through, or does not have the patience to go through, or does not have the brilliance to go through. So with that background, then I'd see, what are physicians actually doing? There's suicide, there's incredible burnout, and there was this fear about the future. They're uncertain. They're looking for patients, and here's the funniest: like, the doctors keep seeking patients, and patients keep seeking doctors, and somehow they don't meet each other. So there are all these dichotomies. So where I went with this was to point a mirror, just tell them where they are, and then show the future from the lens that I was seeing. And to be more specific, if you look at the industry, and this was an exercise that some of the cohorts did, it was about the aging curve. Like, so I've done this I remember even in live workshops. Like, so when you think of a curve that goes up and comes down, and it's an aging curve, like, so there's birth, there is growth, then there is a prime period, and then there is decline, and then there's aging. I'd ask people to plot where they are. So then you begin to ask, okay, how do I change? What do I need to do? And the answer to reverse aging is innovation for any industry, because doing away with the old norms and the old way of doing things and the older practice models, and actually having the courage to innovate in GI, in medicine. Do I invest my time and energy and money in an older practice model, or do I build something that is going to grow and accelerate in the future? Like, so where should I invest my time and money? Again, like, we're about to launch this GI Mastermind virtual program. This is the conversation that I would invite people to have, like, right now, because it is so urgent and critical.
Building upon that concept of this bell curve, a lot of us, especially mid-career, we feel like, okay, we're peaking, right? What's going to happen next? Well, like you said, naturally, you're going to be on the decline unless you have this some type of renewed hope, some type of new opportunity to drive change. I like how you sort of frame that for the group. One of the other fascinating aspects of GI Mastermind for me was you brought back some pretty powerful leaders on the platform. I mean, leaders from big industry, Medtronic, microbiome companies that had already been fully funded, series A, B, C, D, and so how did you get everybody to take the mask off? Because so many of us live in the performative. Like, how did you accomplish that?
I think the credit goes to you guys and the people and the guests who came. Uh, because if you were not willing to take your mask off, there's nothing that I can do to make you do that, right? Like, so, and it starts like from my end, my job is to take my own mask off and just say things as they are, not worry about, what positioning something or how you're going to think. Even in the mastermind program and even with these guests whom we had from, various organizations, and some of whom, interestingly, I know you mentioned the microbiome companies or funded companies, but interestingly, we had companies, startups before they got funded. We had Oshi Health before it became the Oshi Health that we knew. So one aspect was I do spot patterns. I think one of my blessings or easy gifts that I have, I can spot patterns and form views about the future, and they do turn out to be true. Like, so it's not a difficult skill once you figure it out, like, because you're seeing patterns and then you obviously know where the patterns are going to go. So we had all these interesting guests who became the leaders in a few months' time or in a few years' time. A thing on why did they open up is because we opened up. And when they entered our community and when they came in as guests, they saw that this was not like a performative meeting. People were open and they were collaborative. They were even fighting with each other, which was very unusual. Like, critiquing each other and saying, no, I don't agree with you, or, whatever. Like, so very openly and very freely. And that gave them the comfort to open up and share about their own companies and reveal things that they wouldn't otherwise reveal or normally talk about outside of community. And remember, this was a closed space. We didn't record like some of those meetings. Like, so people were free to say whatever.
I think it was fascinating to see two opposing views in a room and still have some type of peace and organization around conversation with that, right?
Yeah.
We had this, we say, if you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing. It's like this Southern saying that, we need to have some tension in order to be able to drive momentum forward. There has to be opposing views. You have to have that pushback. I remember us specifically training a model during GI Mastermind that would identify certain types of polyps. So that's where we were then. And you told us that this was going to be the future. And indeed, 12 to 18 months later, there it is sitting in our endoscopy suites. Where do you see the field of gastroenterology evolving into now?
So this is not about gastroenterology or just medicine. So this is about what's happening in the world right now and where are these trends going and how is that making an impact in healthcare, in medicine, and definitely gastroenterology, right? Like, we're doing this recording in 2026. Biggest thing that's happening in the world right now is AI. And we've been talking about it like right from day one. And this is even before OpenAI, even before Claude and any of the models came into being. So AI is currently doubling every 6, 7 months. So what does that mean? So we are experiencing double exponentials in a year. So at an earlier time, as far as Moore's law is concerned, we would say that technology is doubling every few years. Not that time anymore. It's every few months. So when you accelerate and fast forward to, let's say, even 2030, 4 years from now, you accelerate and go to, let's say, even 2035, you're going to experience so many doublings at a very rapid pace that the world is going to look very, very unlike what it looks today. And this is very hard for people to comprehend because we are talking about an exponential change that the human mind does not have the capacity to naturally grasp. Because the human mind thinks linearly and it will look around itself and say, oh, my patient calendar is full. What could possibly go wrong? But technologies like these are accelerating and are doubling. So, where does that impact? Let's take robotics. So, this year, by summer, Optimus, a humanoid robot, is going to be launched. Elon Musk is behind it. Like the humanoid is going to have capacity to do many of the tasks that human beings are currently doing, the physical tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And by next year, Optimus will be scaling. And in one of the interviews, Elon has said that in about 3 years, max four, it's going to start doing complicated surgeries.
Do you think Optimus will
Um,
be a better surgeon than the best surgeons? How long for that?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
And so it's just a matter of time. Let's assume that he is wrong. And so it's not 4 years. Let's double that, maybe 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, so we're getting into the 2030s now. This is just one humanoid robot. If you look at the other companies, like, so there's something called as Neo, X1, there are industrial robots. All of them are scaling very, very quickly to the point where robots are going to be building robots. They're building factories for robots to build robots, no humans involved. So we're going to get to the point, let's assume that robots should be able to comfortably be doing everything that you probably did in the surgery room or the surgery center this past month. And they'll do it at a faster pace, at greater accuracy. That's impossible for the human hand and the human mind to do. So you're combining robotics plus AI. If it accelerates and converges, and this is the stage that it's going to get to, what impact will it have on the ASC business, on the endoscopy business, on the careers of all the early career gastroenterologists who are, getting into medicine, looking at senior GIs and say, I want to be just like them, but they're not going to be there tomorrow. In the way that you think that they're going to be, it's a different world. So how do you respond and react to that? That's the direction that I'm seeing. So if you take every field, every industry, it's going to either disrupt completely and evolve beyond recognition. And it would be naive to imagine that gastroenterology is not going to go the same way. And to drive into it unprepared is, I think, reckless.
So, how do we then prepare ourselves? We are a field where many gastroenterologists are over 55 and going to be retiring. Then you have your mid-career, but then we have our early career or fellows that are trying to figure out what their future is going to look like amidst this explosion of exponential technology where, Moore's law is accelerated at a rate beyond our comprehension. How do we fit ourselves into that equation? How do we make sure that we stay relevant? How do we stay useful? And how do we ensure that we are prepared and also hopeful about our future?
Aisha, once again, I'll start with mindset, right? Like, so, and this time I'm not going to hide it under the label of leadership, because it does start with mindset. And there are two approaches here. We can look at everything that's happening with a scarcity mindset and say, how do I, save everything that I have? And how do I protect myself and, go in that direction? Like, oh, there's not going to be jobs, there's going to be disruption. What's going to happen to my future? Nobody will want me, nobody wants these skills. Like, so that's the scarcity mindset. The abundance mindset, and we've talked about this often during the GI Mastermind program as well, requires you to be excited about this future. That mindset would tell you this stuff is exciting, it's an adventure. that I'm going to go on, and I'm going to figure out a way to put all this together and reinvent the future like it doesn't exist. And that's going to be so meaningful for me. I'm going to create the opportunities, create the jobs that don't exist. I'm going to be the one to lead the industry into the future. So that's a completely different mindset. So taking that whole abundance mindset and approaching these changes that are happening, various answers for people at various stages. But number one thing is to learn and prepare for what's happening. Understand the underlying themes here. What are exponential technologies? Why are things doubling? And how do you make sense of it? How do I get the drive and energy to take massive, big action, not just incremental action? Like, so figure that part of your mindset first. Like, that's important, regardless of where you are in your career. Knowing how to unlearn and relearn very quickly, that's going to be always relevant. To be innovative is going to be always relevant. To be able to be entrepreneurial, to know what the fundamental dynamics of a startup or a business are, that is always going to be relevant. To know how to manage time and resources, that's always going to be relevant. To know really what is healing, how the human body heals, that is going to be relevant. These fundamental skills, if you focus on, now what you do is you combine these fundamental skills with the opportunities and with the tools that are now available in the form of AI and in the form of robotics. And instead of fearing this future, the question should be, how do I actually embrace and how do I accelerate to this future and actually make it happen? And then you'll see that suddenly so many opportunities open up. The way I'm seeing it, like right now, GI is estimated to be about $136 billion industry, putting everything together, all various disease conditions. This is how the GI startups present to the venture capital world. My challenge and premise to the GI industry is, can you 10x that? Which means we are talking of an industry that is possibly worth $1.4 trillion. And where is that going to come from? It is going to come from the microbiome. It is going to come from the non-invasives and digital biology. It's going to come from AI enhanced care. It's going to come from robotics. It's going to come from virtual GI care. So all of these new avenues are going to create opportunities that we are currently not seeing. To look at this future so differently and say that, like, look, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to start working in this problem space, and because this excites me, and then I'm going to see how to make a different future possible. I think that type of thinking is very, very critical and urgent and important right now.
Yeah, you made a great point of get ready to unlearn, right? Learning to unlearn is one of our greatest challenges, but I really like how you frame the idea of the abundance mindset. And I think that's something that we need to infuse in our various institutions as well. One of the challenges within the traditional institutions is these paternalistic and historic, almost antiquated structures that don't really allow for quick shifts in mindset. How do you propose that we approach those traditional structures?
Start at the periphery, not at the center.
Hmm.
Remember this conversation in one of the GI Mastermind workshops as well. Like, people, once you participate, like, you're so excited, you want to go implement it tomorrow. You want to
Mhm.
get your board together, and you want to tell them, hey guys, wake up, we got to do this now. And then some people did try that. And what happens is everyone resists. The job of the center, the job of the core of any organization, especially older organizations that have been successful in a certain way for a long period of time, their job is to resist, and they're doing the right thing by resisting all your exciting new ideas. So let's accept the system for as it is to begin with, because it's going to cause less frustration when we do that. So
Mhm.
when you because the center is the cash cow, the center is providing for the present. The center means paying for my mortgage and my children's education, for my
Mhm.
retirement. Like, so how can you go and say that center is not going to exist? Of course, people are going to resist that. So let's leave that aside and let's not touch the center. Let's start at the periphery. Let's start at the low-hanging fruit. Let's start with the people who are already seeing the future from the lens that you're seeing. Instead of trying to convince anybody, can I find someone who is as excited about stuff that's happening and who is as bored of the existing norm? So if I can find those innovators, then I start collaborating and partnering with them. Like, so that's another way to look at it. The another thing for large organizations, even private practice or academic centers, is to find stuff that nobody wants to touch. They are difficult problems. They're not very hard to solve, but the problems are difficult, have been in existence for a long time, and people don't want to go there. Start in these open spaces and start building stuff collaboratively with whoever is willing to work with you. And then once you do that, then start presenting it to the center and make it their idea. So once it becomes their idea, then they should be asking you, okay, how do I now implement AI across this area and that area? Because now it's saving me money.
No, I like that idea. It's not disrupting existing systems, it's sort of forming these peripheral coalitions and then presenting them as a value add. I think that is, it's playing nice in the sandbox. It's respecting, what's already there and what is currently keeping everybody afloat, and frankly allowing us to have some space for creativity, because if you're trying to meet your basic needs, you certainly can't be too creative in those environments. And what do you think about our existing training programs? Do you think that those need to shift a bit in terms of incorporating some of the core building blocks that you have as a part of the GI Mastermind into, say, the medical training curriculums for medical students, so that because it's already, as you said, exponential technology disruption has already arrived. So you can't sort of wait until you're out of fellowship to start thinking about how you would adopt technologies or how you can be a part of communities that are building new innovation.
Completely agree. If we are talking about medical education, I think it has to be fundamentally changed. Like, so you're living in a world where people are using open evidence like a million times a day. This is not a number that I'm making up. This is a real number that open evidence has released, that they recently completed 1 million clinical consultations on a single day. We're talking significant momentum towards AI and other exponential technologies happening right now. So now in this era and this age, you're asking such brilliant minds to invest in committing something to memory that's not even going to be useful. So I think it's criminal waste of time that we are doing in medical education. It has to be fundamentally redesigned, and we need to have the courage to actually just do it.
And do you think that GI Mastermind could provide an early blueprint of how organizations can begin to implement this into their medical training programs? I know that's given GI Mastermind a lot of credit, but personally, I found it, again, very transformative with the mirror, the map, the community, and the framework. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes, and I'm going to use your framing because I just love it so much. It is going to provide a mirror and a map. What we're talking about is a virtual GM mastermind program that people are going to watch on their own, experience on their own. But these are classical principles, and once they do that, as they do that, it's going to give them an opportunity to reflect on where they are, where the industry is, where their practice is. Nothing is going to matter if people don't take action. We're very used to taking one program and one course after another, but if you are not going to actually take action, then it's going to be meaningless. So my urge and request for people doing the program or this course would be to take massive action, not hesitate to take the bold action that they know they should be taking, and to use this course and program to create that momentum within themselves, to go ahead and make those big changes in their career, in their life, without afraid of what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen.
One thing that you've done extremely well is sort of support cross-pollination of ideas and cross-collaboration between enterprise, healthcare, and industry. How do you see that playing out in the future, and how important do you think that is for the future?
It's very, very important. First of all, my kudos to the American Gastroenterological Association. AGA is collaborating with the GI Mastermind to launch this program. for everybody for their membership. I think that's incredible. I also think it's very bold of the AGA as the oldest GI organization in the world to be able to embrace the future in the way that they're doing. We are creating an opportunity. Now, what you do with it is completely up to you. Once a community starts forming around this, my plan is to meet the community periodically. And like you were saying earlier, to invite alumni of GI Mastermind to participate and interact with them and share their stories and their journeys. And we can do the same. I would also invite people from the industry, leaders from the industry, to also do the same. I would invite technology startups to do the same, microbiome startups to do the same. Like, so when we do that, when we are actively interested in building the bridge to our own future, the momentum of this is going to accelerate building of that bridge. And that's what I'd love to see happen. So a simple answer is yes.
One trend that I've seen in the technology and innovative space is that physicians are brought in on the back end, or they're brought in to, provide some type of survey feedback on a solution that's already been built. And we continue to feel disempowered and also undervalued. A lot of times these surveys are ridiculous at the amount that they're paying us, right? And we know what the founders or the CEOs or whatever C-suite is making in these various enterprises. How do we convince the enterprises to really value the experience of the physicians that they're bringing in, and for it to be sort of at the onset of ideation that physicians are a part of this and not an afterthought where you're trying to retrofit us in? Because I think that really will help to help physicians to embrace change, but also feel encouraged and empowered and have that abundance mindset that we spoke about.
If you think about it, Aisha, like just reflect on why that must be happening. That why do the enterprises make the physician an add-on at the end or to only one aspect of whatever it is that they're trying to build and figure out? The reason is because the physician is only coming in as a clinical expert. And the reason is the physician may or may not understand the big picture of what the enterprise is trying to build. They may not have perspective. For example, if it is to do with AI, they may not have that perspective. If it's because it's technology, but I'm not a technologist. The point is for the physicians to look within themselves on how they need to evolve as physicians, because that's what the world is demanding. And once again, tying it back to the GI Mastermind program, so what we tried to do is that one of the big underlying objectives was to remove the fear of technology. It's not as scary as you think it is. And there's no point thinking that, hey, I'm not a technologist, I'm not a programmer, so I'm not going to look at Claude AI or OpenAI or any of these platforms. No, you do the opposite. So you start embracing, you start tinkering with it. And then you'll see that it's less to do with technology. AI is providing you a platform to embrace any function or any direction that you want to go to. So you start becoming more than just a clinical doctor with expertise in your specific clinical area. You develop a wider perspective on where things are going. I think that's going to matter a lot. So now when you do that, my suggestion to people always looking for a seat at the table somewhere else is to create their own table and then invite people to their table versus trying to go find a spot on somebody else's table. And that's basically what I did with the GI Mastermind.
I think finding your tribe and then building around a table that you create is absolutely key. I just am always wanting to make sure that physicians understand their value. And I think there's just so much to be said about that. It opens Pandora's box in terms of, so you're creating now a program in partnership with the AGA that will be a global program.
We're going to start with the US, of course, and then the plan is to expand out globally. And if I were to have my way, what I actually wanted to, and we've experimented this with Spanish. So you have Praveen Sutram speaking in Spanish, but that's not me. That's my AI avatar doing it, and I don't actually speak Spanish. The technology is there because the AI avatars or the AI technology, lets you, like in my voice, I will be able to speak more than 100 languages. It'll be great to convert the program into multiple languages and pretty much launch everywhere on the planet where a gastroenterologist exists and actually create that kind of a momentum.
Are you worried about anything within the field of gastroenterology or healthcare in general in the US?
Yeah, I'm worried that pace and the urgency with which the industry is looking at the future, I don't think they understand what's coming. The majority of the industry does not even recognize this.
How do you convey the importance of a program like this, not only in GI, but across all disciplines?
There is a significant cost to inaction, and let's name the costs. So one is relevance. So you like waking up 5 years from now and remembering this conversation and then being irrelevant and thinking that, hey, I should have taken action back then. That's one big cost. Another cost is to do with money. People are earning their livelihood predominantly with, let's just say, single revenue streams. 25 to 40% is coming from screening colonoscopy and a bunch of other procedures. What if liquid biopsy makes screening irrelevant? And many of the procedures just simply go away because now you have robotics doing it at a much more sophisticated level. So neither have you become an advanced endoscopist, nor have you expanded your cognitive GI skills, nor have you expanded on the technology direction. So what's going to happen to your livelihood and your income source? So tie that with the mortgage that you have to pay, the car loan that you have to pay, the student education fund, and your retirement and all of that. Then that becomes obvious. So that's the second cost. The third cost is the emotional cost, which is waking up one day and saying that, oh, I've invested so many decades of my life or so many years and so many hours. Like, look at everything that it took to become a physician, like a doctor. And then to wake up that day and some administrator, some MBA, or to tell you that we don't need you anymore, or, you're not relevant anymore because you didn't keep up, or that's going to have a very big emotional toll. And if we are talking about burnout today, wait until you see that degree of burnout. We're talking of a big emotional cost here. So when you put all this together, while it may appear safe on the surface, has a very, very deep cost. And I think it's important to be practical about this, rational about this, come up with a plan for yourself to really reflect on what you would like your role to be in this future and take the steps to just simply go in that direction. Nobody else is going to do that for you. Not this program, and not your peers, not your organization, no one but just you.
They say that growth comes from being uncomfortable. It's certainly uncomfortable to not know what's next for us, but I'm grateful, thankful, optimistic, and of the abundant mindset. And so I do believe that we as a field are taking back ownership and agency in terms of providing a roadmap and some direction for not only our future, but the future of the field. So I definitely appreciate the partnership that you're doing with the AGA. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the early GI Mastermind groups and to really get to live, breathe, and experience what transformation looks like firsthand. And I'm excited to see what the future brings.
Thank you so much, Aisha. And this has been amazing. And your questions were fantastic. And thank you for being a living example of the possibilities of what one can be when you start taking action in the right direction, in the direction that you want.